Hello everyone and welcome back to the CDL podcast channel. In this episode today, we are obviously going to be going over the matches from this past weekend, and as a precursor to this video here, quick, some of the matches this weekend I had to go back and watch quick highlights or quick VOD on, a few from like Friday and a little bit from Saturday. I was super busy this weekend. I had family stuff, and then I was up north at a friend's cabin helping him with landscaping and stuff. So I was just super busy overall. Wasn't able to catch everything from Friday and Saturday. Like I said, I pretty much watched everything Thursday and Sunday though, so I was able to catch that. But a little bit of the weekend, I only saw some highlights and went back and watched a little bit of VOD. So if it seems like I'm a little fuzzy on a couple of the Friday or Saturday matches, or maybe just analyzing stats and stuff for it, that would be the case. I just wasn't able to catch it all. So if you have even a little bit more deep dive into Friday or Saturday matches to offer down in the comments below, that would be extra good, because I might not be able to provide as in-depth as I normally do. But that's the reason for that, if you're wondering, just so I am able to get that out of the way right away. But please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Share it with a friend who might like it, and then follow on Twitter in the description below. I've been getting a little bit more active on Twitter recently, like during matches and just in general, because I don't know, it's kind of fun. We've got a lot of people that consistently like comment on tweets I put out, and it's just like a more informal way to just like have a constant conversation with people, and it's just kind of fun. I really enjoy talking to those on Twitter. I have people like DM me questions about like what do I think about this, and I don't know, just like the more informal interaction is it's kind of really cool. So follow on Twitter, it's down in the description below if you would like to do that. A little bit more informal and just more accessible way to just talk about stuff if you want to. Even if it's not COD. I mean, I have people messaging me about football, the NFL. I love sports, so even if it's not COD, you just want to talk about some stuff, follow on Twitter down below. I'm pretty much talking about anything on there. It's just more accessible, like I said. But without further ado, let's just get into the matches. I'm going to have some like breaking point stats up in the background so I can remind myself of certain things. But we're probably just going to go in order of the matches and touch on each of them relatively quickly. I don't want to dive too deep into many of them, unless there was like maybe the Atlanta-New York one I'll get into a little more, because that was obviously a super insane, crazy match. But some of the other like 3-0 like blowouts and stuff, I'll just quick touch on them, kind of some quick thoughts about both the teams and stuff. And the first match being Dallas versus Paris. I obviously picked Dallas in this one. Oh, and by the way, like I said in the other video, I forgot to save my picks. I'm pretty sure I only got 1 or 2 matches wrong, and I forgot to save them, so I have a whopping 0 points sitting there on the CDL website. So my pick'ems are chalked for stage 3, because in the first week I got 0 points, despite the fact that I probably would have been like decently high up the standing, because I got like 2 matches wrong only in the first week, but I forgot to save it. And I picked Dallas in this one, and I believe I did pick them 3-1, so I got it right. But this was an interesting match, because coming into it, I'm like, you know what, Dallas is probably going to win. At this point, obviously, they hadn't switched out Huke. He was still playing. I didn't know that was going to be a thing. And I'm like, okay, Dallas. Paris is a new roster. Honeymoon phase is maybe the only way they win it. But Dallas is the better team. I think Paris will have a solid showing. And then all of a sudden, that map 1, they had like a restart when it was like roughly tied on like P3 or something, like moving to P4. There's a restart. Paris comes out of the restart. They play a new map, and Paris absolutely dominated them. They beat them 250 to 111 in that first Garrison hardpoint. And Akko was frying, Scraps was frying, Classic was frying. Temp only went 16 to 19, but I don't know. It's just like I tweeted about it a little bit. You could see on the map that they just seemed like, even if Temp wasn't winning his gunfights, it seemed like the team had more confidence. They weren't like when Fire was on the map, they'd offer him so much assistance to finish kills and stuff, it seemed like, or he just wouldn't finish the kills and their setups would break down. But it seemed like now in this match, they had a lot more faith in Temp. Like, they just trusted him to get the kills, so they didn't have to put as much focus on helping him out, and that allowed the other players to be a little more free on the map, and that's why I thought we saw Classic, Aqua, Scraps fry so much in this first match. And they came out and they won 250 to 111, and then I said, you know, now we get to see Paris in search, which is the one mode I'm concerned about them in, because Aqua's usually a pretty good search player, but Temp teams tend to struggle in search a lot. He's not a great search player, and then they got beat 6-0, and then they got beat down on the control 3-1, and then they got beat down on the final hardpoint 250 to 135. So right after I said, you know what, I'm kind of all in on this Paris team, I got faith in them, they proceeded to get dominated by Dallas in the next 3 maps. And this was really interesting to me. That Dallas benches Huke. We'll talk about it a little bit more later, because Huke played pretty well in the series. Shotsy was actually the weak link for most of the series, and then even in that final checkmate hardpoint, Huke made a couple flank plays. I remember on like the 8 control point. I always forget what point. That's P4, yeah, because it goes. Yeah, plane to yellow crate to underplane, then to A control, and then P5. Yeah. So on P4, Huke made like a flank play on the final P4, where he picked up like a 2 or 3 piece, got the final 20 seconds of scrap time, and then got 2 kills on rotation, and like just like he won them the game basically. Not that it was a close game or anything, but he closed it out pretty much with his kills. And I'm like, oh wow, it was a great play from Huke. Like he looked really good. He struggled a little bit recently and stuff. Hasn't looked as dominant as he did in stage 1, but I was like, okay, maybe Huke's back. Maybe he's gonna dominate stage 3 again because he looked really good. And then all of a sudden he gets benched. So for Dallas, I'm a little confused because after that map 1 where they struggled, they looked awesome and looked like they were about to hit form again. And for Paris, I'm a little bit worried because I was confident after that map 1, and then they rattled off 6 straight map losses. But moving on to the next match, it was Toronto versus Florida. This is another match I was really excited for because we think that Toronto is a top team now. Maybe not the top team, but we thought they were a top team coming into this because obviously they had just won the last major. But we're not 100% sure, because before they won the major, they didn't look all that good. They just looked like an average at best team. So we didn't want to overreact and say like, oh my God, Toronto's amazing. And then Florida had made a roster change with Havoc, so we're kind of excited to see them. But overall, Toronto just flat out dominated, especially the subs in the matchup. Bance didn't do anything like crazy. He only had a 0.9 in the series, and Kleenex only had a 1. But when you compare it to the subs on the side of Florida, who both had exactly 0.68, it's a pretty good domination. Insight was, 70 and 42 on the series. Cammy was 80 and 61. The only person that did anything on Florida really was Awakening with a 1.1. But overall, the ARs on Toronto just dominated, and then the subs did their job around a 1, while the subs on Florida, Neptune and Havoc, both just played horrible. Toronto won at 3-0, 250 to 161 in the hardpoint, then a 6-5 in the search and destroy, and a 3-2 in the control. So, like, overall, the control and search did end up being relatively close, which is a decent sign for Florida considering they're a new team. But they just got outslayed, like, completely off the map. To me, this was kind of like Toronto establishing that, hey, our win wasn't a fluke. It's a good win. It was also nice to see Bance. He didn't play insane, but it was nice to see him continue to play well because for Toronto's sake, you're obviously hoping that the Bance playing insane at the major carries over and isn't just a fluke. And it seemed like he proved that even if he's not going to play as crazy, because it's pretty impossible to play how well he did at the major consistently. He dropped like a 1.5 or a 1.6 or I don't know. It was 1.4 to 1.6 somewhere in there in that 8-game series in the final. Nobody's going to be able to keep up a 1.4 or 1.5. That's just not possible. You have to be literally the best player of all time to do that. And I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Simp or Bance or anybody in the league. Abezy, you're not going to be able to keep up a 1.5 consistently. That's just not possible. But Bance played pretty well. Florida showed some promise, although they did lose 3-0. Maps 2 and 3 were very close. And then later in the week, they ended up showing a little more promise, and we'll get into that. But the next match, the first match of, I believe this is the first match of Friday, was LA Thieves versus Seattle Surge. I'm pretty sure I picked Surge in this one 3-2, just because I've been kind of riding the Surge wave. I tweeted about it too. They're like my favorite team to watch. I just love watching them. I don't know what it is about it, but I just love watching them. Maybe it's, I talked to Rex from Best of 3 a little bit on Twitter, and I was just saying, like, I don't know, we were both saying, like, maybe it's just like the boomer in us or something, being old COD fans, we just want to watch kind of a team of all veterans do well, and that honestly probably is what it is. I like to watch a team of all veterans win. But unfortunately in this series, they got reverse swept. Honestly, the catalyst in that was pretty much Kenny and Draza. Venom played really well. He had a 0.99, a 1 KD basically. TJ had a 0.85, not bad, doing the dirty work. Draza had a 1.2. Kenny had a 1.1, but honestly, Draza in that map 5 was just making plays. I believe he had a 1v2 or 1v3, I can't remember what it was, to finish out the final raid search. But obviously, Seattle wins a close Apocalypse hardpoint map 1. They won a 6-4 search map 2. They were up 2-0. Then they get dominated in control. They lose a close checkmate hardpoint, and then they lose that search with like however many restarts. That was really unfortunate though, because I believe Gunless was like on a 5 streak, close to getting score streaks, and then the game had to reset for some reason, and then LA Thieves ends up winning it. So it's a little bit of like flukiness with the whole reset, and we don't really know what's happening. So I don't know. It's a little weird with that. I guess you could say maybe Seattle would have closed it out in that case. But on the side of LA Thieves, I just really love this team. Venom seems to be kind of finding his footing as a pro here after just like, I don't know, just seeming to struggle to find like his role in the first few matches, especially when Slasher was on the team. TJ is looking really good. TJ, like, he didn't have a crazy KD in the series or anything, but I don't know. TJ to me just seems to be playing as well as I've seen him play maybe since like the beginning of Black Ops 4. And Kenny and the Maniar is something special. I don't know. It's interesting because I feel like he catches teams off guards a lot. Like, I don't know, he just catches them off guard because he's playing so fast, and like typically we're used to when we say Maniar, somebody like Octane who's not necessarily playing like super slow, but they're going to play a little slower, bait their teammates, just deal damage from long range, play their life a little bit more, probably have like a 1.2, 1.3, but Kenny's more willing to just have like a 1.1 or more around a 1, but gets so aggressive and just fry on kills. He's almost playing like a sub with the AR, and it's actually really cool to see. It's like something new that we haven't really seen, and I love watching it. On the side of Surge, just a tough loss. To me, it's like I thought this team had potential to possibly finish top 3 in their next group, but then when the group draw happened and I saw that they had Subliners, Optic, Faze, LA Thieves in their group, I was like, shoot, I don't think they're going to make top 3 anymore, and especially now they're not going to since they went 0-2 on the week. Honestly, for me, it comes down to control for them. They won a hardpoint in this series against LA Thieves, who's a good hardpoint team, and lost a very close one. They won a search and lost a search in 2 close ones. But the difference was they were close in hardpoint, close in search, but they would just work completely outclassed in the control. They got dominated. For me, this team just can't go any further than being a good team with potential to upset if they can't improve their control, because they're basically relying on themselves to win the first 2 maps in every series, go up 2-0, pretty much lose the control every time, go up 2-1, and then hope they can close out one of those last 2 maps. They're basically just hoping and praying that they win the first 2 maps, because if they don't, they're basically guaranteed to be down 2-1 in the series or get 3-0'd because they're not going to win a control. But yeah, so just disappointing from the Surge overall. The next match, Optic versus London. Not a whole lot to talk about in this one. Optic wins at 3-1 like we'd expect. Envoy played really well, around 1.2. Formal and Dasher both were around a 1, so was Scump. On the side of London, Zed 0.9, Zap 0.8, then Shawnee and Paul around 1s. Like nothing crazy, nothing too bad from either side. The maps were relatively close. Optic wins the first hard points, and then wins the second search, loses a close control, and then they win the game 4 Moscow hardpoint pretty handily. The control, I mean, overall was relatively dominant. By London, at least stats wise. Paul 1.8, Zap 1, Shawnee 1.2, and everybody on Optic was negative. And this is a concern for Optic. I would say on the side of London, they kind of get a little bit of a pass for this week, maybe because they did have to play 2 tough teams in Optic and LA Thieves, and they had a new person in their roster, Zap, although Zap really struggled this weekend, so I'm interested to see where that goes from there. On the side of Optic, though, a lot of good takeaways from this match. You won 2 hardpoints against a team that has enough talent to compete with you in hardpoint. Played very, very well. Your search has looked improved. You won another search. The issue is, and I was talking to Salvation's Elite a little bit on Twitter, and like he was mentioning, I didn't even realize this, but against teams not named like Paris and Surge, I believe he said, since like the start of Stage 2, Optic hasn't won a control against anybody else. And they're really struggling on control, especially Checkmate used to be like their map. They used to feel so confident on Checkmate hardpoint, Checkmate control, and they played Checkmate control this series, and they got beat 3-2, which seems close, but honestly, based on the scoreboard, wasn't all that close slaying-wise. They were just able to eke out 2 defenses, I believe it was. But, I mean, Optic needs to figure out that control. If they can figure out the control, I think that they could even pass Atlanta for maybe being the second team and then fight for a win, because, I mean, they look very good in hardpoint like usual, and right now their search is hot. I mean, there could be a point this year where their search goes down, because you know how Optic is. They tend to get really hot in search, look amazing, and then they have a couple weeks where they literally can't win around. Maybe that stage where they couldn't win around happened early enough in the year, though, when they used to struggle in it, but who knows. And the next match, LAG versus Paris. What a weird one. I was pretty confident Paris was going to win this. LAG, coming with Chino, I was like, you know, this team, they have a lot of solid veterans, but they don't really have any, like, star power. I mean, Chino and Assault are solid ARs, are going to shoot straight, but they both play very slow. And then Silly is a slower sub, and Apathy is kind of like a go sub, even though he can slow it down if he has to. And then I was like, you know what, I feel pretty confident in Paris, but honestly, Paris got just wiped off the map. They got beat by 100 in the first hard point. Just everybody but Scraps pretty much got dominated. They got beat 6-2 in the Search and Destroy, and then they got beat 3-2 in the Raid Control. Honestly, I was super happy watching this, because although, you know, I pretty much always cheer for Paris just because, I don't know, I just kind of like them. I was super happy because I'm a big Chino fan. I don't know how you can't like Chino. Awesome dude, and I was happy to see him play so well, because not only did he come in and they won 3-0 with him, I mean, in the first map he dropped a 1.2, In the search, he went 10-4, and then in the raid control, he went 39-30 with 8k damage. I mean, Chino was dominating on the map. This is interesting to me. I always say I'll never get high on LAG again, and then they go and do this to me. I'm still not super high on them. I still don't think that their ceiling is all that high, but I am interested to see if they can become more consistently competitive, because like in a lot of their series with Vivid, this isn't a knock to Vivid either, because I still think Vivid was the best player on their team. I just think that Vivid maybe played at a pace that was too fast for this specific team. I think Vivid's pace is very good, and on most teams it would work. But I think Apathy was trying to play a little slower, slow it down. I think Assault, obviously, like usual, was trying to play super slow, and Silly for a flex is probably one of the slower flexes. So I feel like they were all just trying to play so slow, while Vivid was trying to play so fast, and he was just getting caught off, and the team pacing was so off that they just couldn't win because, first of all, they couldn't bail themselves out in talent because they were pretty much less talented than every team they were playing, and then their pacing was also off, which doesn't make it hard, or which makes it very hard on them. So their pacing's off, so it's hard to win maps like that. And on top of that, they have less talent than every team they're playing, so they can't just bail their way out of situations with gun skill. So it's kind of puts them in essentially an impossible position to try to win matches. But now you got Chino, who's a very slow AR. You got Assault, who's another slow AR. And then Silly and Apathy, who are slower subs. So they're going to have very good teamwork, all veteran players. They all know what they're doing. And then they're going to just be playing at the same exact pace, which, I mean, I'm kind of always been of the belief that either you've got to play fast, you've got to play slow, you got to play medium, you got to pick a speed to play at. But you've all got to be on the same page and the same pace, because when you're on the same pace, at least you're doing things together. It's better to do things together than to all be playing like two people fast, two people slow, and just doing things separately. If you're going to be really slow, at least all of you have to be slow and play together. That's kind of what I'm a believer in. I think that's why they were successful in this series. I mean, Assault dropped a 1.58, Chino had a 1.36. I mean, even Apathy was at a 1.1-ish, and Silly was a 1 kill negative, 53 and 54. So LAG, I'm interested to see if they can keep the map slow against other teams. I mean, Chino and Assault are going to be able to keep up with most AR duos. They're not like crazy skill, but they're going to play slow and they're going to get their kills. Like, they can keep up with AR duos, especially with the Krig being like kind of a slow gun. I mean, you can do it all, you can push with it, but it's beams from long range, and Chino's always been very good at that with guns like that. So I'm very interested to see. I'm not going to like get too high on LAG, but I'm very interested to see if this change can continue to make them more competitive. On the side of Paris, I mean, everybody but Scraps got fried in this series. I'm a little concerned. I was super high on them. I think it could have just been a dud series. Didn't know what to expect against LAG, but I'm worried about them. Next match, Florida versus Minnesota. This was kind of a shocker, to be honest. I mean, Florida wins at 3-1. Skies fried. Neptune played well. Awakening fried per usual, 96 and 76. Havoc struggled a little bit, but hey, they won 3-1. And then Priest on the side of Minnesota was the only guy even above a 0.9. Standy struggled a little bit. Accuracy struggled in this one. He kind of got beat down by Skies a little bit. And overall, the map set, I mean, there were some close maps. The first hardpoint wasn't close. Florida dominated. Then they won around 11 on Moscow. And then the raid control, they lose 3-2. Minnesota is such a good control team. Big Wake dominated the search at 13-6. Priest was 14-6, but the rest of his team didn't show up. And the raid control, Minnesota wins it. Minnesota is such a good control team. It's like their big strength now. And then Florida wins the last hardpoint by about 60 points. Overall, I would say this, obviously, I mean, it can't be a bad sign for Florida if you're beating a team like Minnesota, who is a top team. But for Minnesota, it seems like the struggles continue in hardpoint and search. I mean, obviously, they lose the search in round 11, but a lot of the round 11s haven't been going their way. I mean, I guess you can say technically like the Optic one went their way, but like in most situations, they're going to lose that round 11 against Optic. They lose this one. And I'm a little bit concerned because their hardpoint seemed to be improving, but now they get beat twice pretty easily on it. On raid and garrison, they lose search again. They continue to dominate control. Overall, not too concerned about them. They're still a great team. If they can fix up the hardpoint and become more consistent in it, as well as search and destroy, if they can just become more consistent in those modes, they're arguably the best control team, or one of the best control teams in the game. They're going to win that probably 60 to 70% of the time. If they can just shore up that hardpoint and search, I believe Minnesota is going to do well. On the side of Florida, we're going to get into a little bit of controversy that I have, an opinion I have in the team later in the hot take section. So be sure to stick around for the end of the video and offer your thoughts in the comments down below on the hot or not section, because I do have one regarding Florida, so I don't want to get into it too much. But overall, I'm impressed by them. Next match, Optic versus Seattle. Not a whole lot to talk about in this one. We kind of have mentioned things I'd want to mention for both these teams. It was an overall relatively close series. I mean, Optic only won the first hardpoint by 10 points. They got a good break on that bus hill. like it always seems to be. And then they won the search 6-4, and then the checkmate, they win that 1-3-1 on the checkmate control. So overall, I mean, the same thing I want to talk about for Optic here. Good to see them win a control, although it's against Seattle, so I don't know how much we can take away from that, because Seattle is by far the worst control team in the game. I would say the same thing for Optic. That's why I don't want to talk about this match too much. Same thing for Optic. They look very good in hardpoints. They look good again in search, because I would consider Seattle to be one of the better search teams. They're a very good search team. Even if they're not winning the map, they're always making it close. Seattle's a good search and destroy team, which is weird to say because they were so bad last year. But Seattle's a good search team, so for Optic to beat them as well, that's good. Optic wins the Moscow hardpoint. Good to see. They win the control, but I don't want to like put a ton of stock in that, because Seattle sucks at control. So, I mean, Optic's been bad at control recently too, like I said, so I don't want to put too much stock in that. Then on the side of Seattle, same thing. They're basically exactly who we think they are. They're going to keep every map close except for control. They were so close to winning the hardpoint, so close to winning that search, and they get dominated in control. It's the same thing for them. They basically have to win the first two maps. In this case, they don't, so they get 3-0'd because they lost the first two and they're not going to win a control. It's the same thing. If Seattle can somehow find a way to make their control even like a 50-50 map, if they can win it half the time, they become a scary team, but right now they just can't do that. Then it was LA Thieves versus the London Royal Ravens. I believe this was the first match of Sunday. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. And LA Thieves wins this one 3-1. Main AR Kenny was in full effect. I did a DraftKings like team for the day, and I drafted Kenny as my MVP on there, and that really paid off considering he went 95 and 57 on the series. Venom fried as well with a 1.2. Draza and TJ were both around ones. On the side of London, I mean, overall, nobody had even a 0.9. They just got fried, essentially. They got beat in, or London, I'm sorry, beat them in the first hard point by about 100 points, and I was like, okay, London, I mean, we're going to see something from you here, see some fire. And then, no, they got beat 6-1 on the search, 3-1 on the control, and then beat by about 100 in the Garrison hardpoint in map 4. And that Garrison hardpoint in map 4, too, I mean, Kenny was just frying, and so was Venom. 33 and 21 for Kenny, 32 and 18 for Venom. On the side of London, everybody basically but Paul was just in a blender. There's not a ton of takeaway from this one, because basically both teams showed who we thought they are. London fought a little bit in the map, won a map, and then just kind of got dominated in control and search, and then made the last hardpoint somewhat competitive, but eventually got put in the blender late in it. That's basically who we think they are. They're a team that can compete, maybe win a map, but when they face a team, they're most likely going to get out-talented. That's why London probably is the 12th team in the league right now, unfortunately, because I would love to see them be great. And on the weekend, if you were looking for Zapdius to be the difference maker, yikes, because he had a 0.8 in the first series and a 0.7 in this one. He didn't really look particularly good in any map. He didn't even hit 10k damage in the series. My takeaway for LA Thieves is, I'm going to talk about it a little bit, so I don't want to get into it, but I love main AR Kenny. I think he is just different. He's like adding a new element to the game. Usually we've always seen main ARs be told they have to be slower, hold spawns, hold power positions, and they definitely should be in certain situations, and AR should be holding power positions. That's a big part of the game. But the way Kenny just flies around the map and plays so fast, I mean, he had 95 kills as a main AR and 57 deaths. He had about the same amount of deaths as his teammates, but like 30 more kills than any of them. I mean, he had like 30 more kills than anybody else in this series. I mean, he was just flying around the map and dominating. He's different. He was positive 38. 1.7 in a pro match is insane. I mean, Kenny is just different on the main AR, and Venom, like I said, coming into his own, played very well. Draza played very well, and TJ, he might not be dropping even ones, but he's just so aggressive on the map and is opening up so many lanes, and he's so good in search and destroy. He went 6 and 2 in this search because it's such a fast search. There wasn't much, but he just always seems to be able to find the first blood and find the pick, and he's very, I don't know if the stats will say he is, but it seems like, at least watching, he seems so untradeable a lot of times on those first bloods, kind of like Abezy is. But yeah, London, kind of who we thought they were. They're not going to be able to really win many games unless they're playing the bottom teams. And LA Thieves, I'm excited for this team's potential. We'll get into that a little bit in the hot takes section as well. And then maybe the best match of the weekend, New York versus Atlanta. New York comes out, punches him in the mouth in that first hardpoint. Clay was frying, and so was Hydra. Clay went 33 and 21. Hydra went 31 and 24. Mac and Asim did their job. On the side of Atlanta, it was basically Simp versus the world. He had a 1.46. Everybody else had like a 0.7 or lower. But then Atlanta bounces back, wins the search 6-3 on Express. And then the garrison control that New York absolutely threw. If you watch the flank at all, I mean, New York threw that garrison control. They had so many chances to win. At this point, I picked New York 3-2. Of course, it didn't save, but if you go back and watch the video, I did pick New York 3-2. But at this point, I kind of thought Atlanta was going to win it since they were up 3-2. But then the Apocalypse hardpoint is insanely close. New York gets a late break. Clay gets a bunch of kills at the end. They win by 9 points on the Apocalypse hardpoint, and then they win 5-3 comeback, a crazy round 11. Basically, I can't remember who it was. I think it was maybe it was Cellium. I think it was Cellium threw a flash or a stun into Zig. Basically, it landed at Asim's feet, and it somehow didn't register or didn't stun him, so they didn't get the check. They didn't think anybody was Zig, and of course, there were 2 players Zig. They picked up the kills. Basically, that was kind of a crazy round, but nonetheless, New York clutches up. They win. They beat Faze 3-2. This is an interesting one to take away. For New York, it's a super positive because you played Apocalypse hardpoint for, I believe, the first time, and I know for a fact that was their first time they played Raid Search. They win both those maps. They were down 2-1 to arguably the best team in the game. I mean, you could argue Toronto is, but regardless, Faze is one of the best teams in the game, and New York is able to beat them with a new player. And, I mean, on the series, Hydra had a 1.1. He went 85 and 78. He had 16k damage. A really crazy good series from Hydra in his debut. I mean, I am excited to see this guy continue to play. He showed a crazy amount of talent. Clay had another good series, and Mac and Asim were consistent. I like Mac on the flex. He seems to fit that role very well. I think he feels more comfortable in that. You could just tell, and I think he's only going to get better. I'm super excited for New York's potential because I think Hydra is only going to get better as he plays and gets more chemistry with the team. I think Clay's going to stay consistent as always. I think Mac is only going to get better as he learns the flex role a little bit more since he was playing a sub the whole year. Diamond was on the flex. I think Mac's going to continue to get better in the flex. And I think Asim, as long as he can stay at least somewhat close to what he's been this whole year, I think this team has crazy potential to maybe take a top 3, top 2, maybe even eventually the top spot in the league. On the side of Faze, it seems like people are hitting the panic button so much in them. I'm not ready to hit the panic button. I know they lose the first hardpoint, but they won a search and probably should have won the last search. They win the control, even though New York kind of threw it, and then they lose a very close hardpoint. I mean, this is just a case of how competitive the league is this year. New York is a great team. Faze is a great team. They had a battle down to around 11 game 5. There are definitely concerns with Faze. They aren't as dominant in search. They lost the search again here. They didn't look as dominant in control. They obviously lost both hardpoints, so they don't look that dominant in that respect. But once again, there definitely is a time to question Faze. They need to do some work. They need to improve in search. Again, they need to get back to how dominant they were. They need to go back to the drawing board a little bit in hardpoint and get better on the same page as a team because they were kind of off a little bit. But once again, there's still a top 2, top 3 team. It's not time to just say, oh my god, Faze sucks. Like some people are ready to say. This was just a match of 2 great teams battling out, and they were just super competitive with each other because they're both good teams. And the last match, not much to talk about here other than Dallas's roster change. It was Toronto versus Dallas. Toronto just wiped the floor with them 3-0. They won a very close checkmate, hard points, 6-3 search, and then a 3-2 control. I mean, on the series, everybody on Dallas had a 0.9 and Fellow had a 0.8, and everybody on Toronto had a 1, a 1.3, 1.1. I mean, everybody on Toronto just basically dominated in the slaying department. My takeaway from this, Toronto, very good team. Even though Dallas had a roster change, Fellow's still a good player, and they still have Illy, Shotzi, and Krim, 3 of the world champions from last year. And Toronto still was able to come out and dominate them. Toronto, arguably the top team now. Dallas, I don't know what they're doing. There's got to be something going on personally between the Oregon Huke or between the players in Huke because, I mean, the change makes no sense. I know Dallas hasn't won an event this year or anything, but there's only been 2 events, and Faze was absolutely dominant in the first one. Dallas made the final, and then Dallas was top 3 or top 4 in the last one. When you look at the point standings, Faze is in first with 225, but Dallas is in second with 190 right behind them, and the next person is Chicago with 30 points behind them at 160. So Dallas is still second in the standings with Huke in there because all those wins have come with Huke. So, I mean, they're still second in the standings. They're decently close to first. One major win would put them easily in first, or a run of wins with Faze losing a couple would put them in first. I just don't understand the change. Honestly, I mean, Fellow, good player. I feel bad for him because it's unfortunate he had to come into a situation where it just doesn't make any sense that he's in it because he's a good player, but he's no Huke. He also, from my knowledge, whenever I've seen him, he's always been a sub, and now he's playing a flex. Just a weird situation because I truly believe that fellow deserves to be in the league. He just got thrown into a situation where he was replacing like maybe the stage 1 MVP basically. Like I said, it's got to be something. There's like some personal issue with Huke in the organization, or Huke and one of his teammates, or all of his teammates, because it just doesn't make sense. It has to be something like that, because Illy, Shotzi, and Huke were like a trio, like unbreakable. And they just basically couldn't be broken up, and now all of a sudden you're trying to tell me that they were just willing to part ways with him and they don't care. And even the fact that they were second in the league in points, they were just like, yeah, let's just switch out for fellow. Let's get rid of, let's break up our core. That's why I believe it has to be something so insane, because Hastro has had Huke on his roster since he came back to COD in World War II. He had him in World War II, had him in BO4, loaned him out a little bit to Splice when the team sucked, so he could try to win, brings them back. He plays with them in MW, and then he plays with them this year. I mean, this is like his 4th or 5th year on Envy for COD. He was on Envy for Halo. He's been in the org for like 5 or 6 plus years. To just randomly bench him on a whim like this for a guy like fellow, not even like a young up-and-comer, it's just, there's got to be something wrong with it. I don't know what it is. But that is it for the matches for this weekend. Now that we're done with that, I want to just quick go over our power rankings. This was one of the tougher power rankings once again to do, because Dallas Empire, it's a weird thing with their new roster. If they still had Huke, they'd still be up there for me regardless of how they played. But with their new roster, they had to get dropped. And I truly believe there are 8 teams in the league right now that could potentially win an event, which is probably the most we've ever had. So like putting some of these teams down as low as they are seems criminal. But at number 12, I think it's fairly obvious we've got London. They probably have the lowest ceiling in the league right now. Maybe you could argue LAG. Or Paris, but I just don't have that much confidence in London to really win any maps. And then at 11, we've got Paris Legion, a solid team, and I think they still have potential, but right now this weekend they looked very bad, and we haven't seen them get a win with this new roster yet. They're 0-2, so it's hard to put them anywhere above 11. At 10, LAG, once again, this is about as high as you can put them. The only reason they're ahead of Paris and London, I usually would put them below them probably, but the only reason is they absolutely fried this weekend, and while I think it might have been like slightly a fluke, the fact of the matter is they won 3-0. They beat Paris, so you can't really put them below Paris right now. And London just doesn't look good, so you got to put them ahead of them. 9, it feels kind of criminal to put them this low, Seattle Surge, but to me they've got to be 9 because they went 0-2 this week. They were reversed up by LA Thieves and then 3-0 by Optic. They're one of the better teams we've ever had at 9 in the power ranking since the CDL started, though, because I still feel like they're a team that on the right day can beat anybody, like I said. Their issue is just control. They can't win a control, but they're a solid team that can beat anybody on any given day because they're very strong on hardpoint and search. And honestly, their matches were both close. They got reverse swept in a crazy series, and then even though they got 3-0 by Optic, the hardpoint and search were both very close. They could have won both maps. And then at 8, here starts the teams that I honestly believe can win an event. It seems criminal to have them this low, but the reason they're this low is because of sample size, and that is the Florida Mutineers at 8. Like I said, the reason I put them below is because every other team besides maybe Dallas with their new roster we have a lot larger sample size of, or they've been consistently better than Florida this year. But Florida is a very good team. They're just at 8 because everybody else has been playing better for longer. But I do think Florida has a chance to climb up a little bit because we've only seen their roster for 2 matches. 7, this is probably the lowest they've ever been on any power rankings for the CDL. Dallas Empire, it feels crazy to put them there. The reason I put them there is because if they had Huke, they'd be higher. But I think the ceiling of this team with Fellow is a lot lower. I still think they could potentially win any event they go to. I still think at the end of the year they're probably going to finish top 4 at champs and be very competitive. But just as of right now, I feel like they're lower than these other teams, which is 6, LA Thieves. This might be a little high. I feel like a lot of people will probably have Empire at 6 and Thieves at 7. But the reason I go Thieves at 6 is because I feel like Empire is trending down and I'm not sure about their roster. And I feel like Thieves are just getting better and better with their roster. And they bring a new play style to COD that we haven't seen much of, especially over the last few years because it was 5v5. But I really like LA Thieves, so I have them at 6. I think they're ascending. 5 is Minnesota. I really battled with actually putting Minnesota at 6 and LA Thieves at 5. But the reason I went with Minnesota is because most people would probably put them ahead of LA Thieves. They've been a little more consistent. They struggled and had a bad loss to Florida. But overall, I think they're a really good team and have potential to win any match they're in. So got to go with them at 5. And then at 4, this was another tough one. 3 and 4, you could flip either way. I went with 4 as New York because Hydra has only played 1 match. They look crazy now. Obviously, they beat Faze, who's arguably the best team in the game. But I put them at 4 because, to me, Optic's looked also very good recently and been a little bit more consistent throughout the year. We've seen Optic. They had that one bad week, but overall, Optic's been pretty darn good all year. I mean, they haven't had like a top finish at a major, but overall, through most of their matches, they look very competitive or win them, or they lose crazy matches like the one to Minnesota in the major. So I put them at 3 because I feel like they've had a little bit bigger body of work, although I do think that New York maybe has a higher ceiling. I think if New York plays at their peak, they could be better than Optic. So maybe by the end of next week, we'll see New York jump to 3 and Optic drop down to 4. But for now, just because they've been better for a little bit longer and haven't had as many like duds as New York, where New York went 0-6 in the major, I put Optic at 3, New York at 4. And then finally, for the first time like all year, we have a switch at 1. I moved Faze down to 2. Now, I necessarily don't think that Faze is worse than Toronto and deserves to be at 2, but simply the fact that we saw them lose to New York this week, and New York looked very good with a new team, and Toronto came out and dominated in both their matches. I believe that means that we have to put Toronto at 1 now. I'm not 100% sold on the fact that Toronto is 1, but they go 2-0 on the week, they dominate, and then Faze lost to New York. So for the time being, Toronto is hotter and looks consistently dominant, while Faze has been struggling. So Toronto's got to be 1 and Faze has to be 2. Yeah, and that's our power ranking. So it goes starting from top to bottom. It goes Ultra, Faze, Optic, Subliners, Rocker, Thieves, Empire, Mutineers, Surge, Guerrillas, Legion, and then Royal Ravens. And honestly, that was one of the toughest power rankings I've ever done, simply because it feels like it's a sin to even put Dallas anything lower than like top 4. But I'm pretty confident they're going to bounce back. But to end out the pod here, I want to dive into some hot takes. Like I said, I don't necessarily always fully believe in these hot takes, but they're one I can see somebody making a point for, and they bring up good conversation. So comment down below if you made it to this point in the pod. If you think it's a hot take when I offer it, meaning that you agree with it. There's going to be 3 of them in total, so you can just number them 1, 2, 3 in your comment or something. But if you say it's hot, that means you agree with it and why you agree with it. Or if you say that take's not it, that means you don't agree with it and explain why you don't agree with it. And the first one's going to involve LA Thieves. So first of all, I think LA Thieves are going to continue this run that they're on. They went 2-0 this week. They look good in the major. And I don't think it's a honeymoon period. They're going to continue to play well. And I think they're going to make a run to be a consistent top 4 or top 5 team. Not a flash in the pan top 4, top 5 team, but I think they're going to be a consistent top 4 or top 5 team the rest of the year. The only reason I would have a counterpoint to argue maybe they won't be is because, I mean, we have teams like Toronto who looks great. We have a team like Chicago, Atlanta, Minnesota, Dallas, New York, and possibly even Florida. So even if you don't even include Florida in there, between Toronto, Chicago, Atlanta, Minnesota, Dallas, and New York, that is 6 teams that I believe you could argue are better than LA Thieves. And then possibly even Florida, like I said, could potentially be better with LA Thieves with a new roster. And then if you add Thieves in there, that's literally 8 teams that I could see winning a tournament, and I don't think that's ever been a thing. So basically the hot take is, with this new roster, Thieves are going to keep getting better, and they're going to be a consistent top 4 or top 5 team. So comment down below your thoughts on that one. The next one, these next 2 are going to be pretty lengthy. I wrote out some notes on them, and the notes go very in-depth. They're very long. But the next one, a little more controversial. That first one was more of like a softball. It's just like yes or no, do you think they're going to be that consistent? But the next 2 are kind of like curveballs and go into some pretty interesting stuff that I don't think most people are willing to question. And the first one is Krim needs to find a way on his next team to be a flex. I'm assuming he's going to be on Empire again next year as long as he keeps playing, doesn't have a shock retirement, because I don't know why anybody would ever get rid of him. But he needs to find a way to get another main AR on his team and be the flex. And I'm not saying Krim is bad. Krim is the greatest player of all time, so don't come at me for any slander of him. He can be a great main AR. He can win as a main AR. He can probably win champs this year as a main AR. But I think he's insane in any role he plays, but every time he is more of like a flex/sub, like a flex sub, his team is better. I mean, he was a flex/sub in AW. Optic was the best team in the game. He's a flex/sub in Black Ops 3. Optic was the best team for basically the whole game besides maybe the end of the year, but they're essentially overall the best team in the game. He's a flex or sub in IW. Optic won champs. In World War II, he takes the main AR role from Formal, and the team sucks. They struggle. They have to have a roster change. Can't win an event. In BO4, he's the main AR. The team is solid. They win the first event, but after that, once other teams catch up, they can't beat teams with elite main ARs. Octane on 100T, they couldn't beat them. RC's on E United, they couldn't beat them. And even last year, he gets back on the flex role where he can play more aggressive as an AR, and then Clay's more of the slower main AR, and they win champs. And now this year he has to kind of slow it down a bit because Illy's the faster AR, and then he's got Huke and Shotzzy in front of him. And Dallas looks like the worst we have seen them since the CDL started. I mean, they're still solid, and they can still win events on the right weekend. They could even win champs this year, who knows? But I truly believe Crim is at his best when he can fly a little bit more and ego chow while playing a flex role, where he doesn't have to play as structured and slow like a main AR is supposed to, holding down spawns, holding down power positions. I believe when Crim has a little more freedom to just fly, ego chow, and just show the crazy talent he has, he's better. So, I mean, basically the hot take is I believe Crim needs to find a way to be a flex on his next team, because while his teams can be good with him in a main AR, he doesn't hit his individual peak, and his teams don't hit their individual peak when he's playing main AR. There's more when he's a flex, his teams hit their peak. So basically I'm saying Crim needs to be a flex. Maybe not necessarily this year because I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think they're going to pick up a main, but on his next team he needs to find a way to get a main to play with him. Last section of the video here, it goes into one on Florida. I don't know if we've ever done one on Florida, but the take is that Florida should go absolutely all in, drop the bag of money or whatever in trying to acquire Huke or Vivid. I think Florida is basically on the verge of something special. I mean, they have Sky's one of the most talented main ARs in the league, no arguments. I mean, nobody would argue that he's not one of the most talented. You got Big Wake, arguably the best flex in the game, with that insane slaying talent, insane game knowledge, like some of the best instincts I've seen in a long time. Kind of like Karma level instincts. I always thought Karma had like the best instincts, and I think Big Wake is up there. I mean, then you got Neptune. He's a young sub. He struggles with consistency issues, but he can absolutely keep up with anyone in the slaying department. I mean, he's hot and cold, and on the day when he's hot, he can basically keep up with anyone. Plays very fast, and I mean, Havoc is a nice player, but I feel like he only makes them a fringe top 5 team at best, and I can't see their ceiling going too much higher than that top 5. Like fringe outside of that, maybe finishing top 4. But if they pick up Huke, their slaying potential is at an Atlanta Faze or Optic level. I mean, you've got Sky's Awakening, Neptune, and Huke. That team has slaying potential that's up there with Faze and Optic. And I think they could beat anyone just simply based off talent. And if they pick up Vivid, they may not jump as much in the slaying category because I think Huke is probably more talented than Vivid in that department. But I believe they can still jump more than with Havoc because I think Vivid does provide more slaying potential than Havoc. But they also become way better in search. Havoc is a good search player, but Vivid is next level. He could really help him with a lot of the woes they see in search, and he could also improve that slaying and respawn, like I said. They might have an IGL issue if they pick up Huke or Vivid for Havoc. I know Havoc's very vocal in game. I know Nameless has talked about teaming with him in the past. He's been very vocal. But also, I don't necessarily think that Havoc provides like the complete IGL. I feel like Skies and Awakening kind of can provide that. And Huke also could provide that if he's in there. I think Vivid is a very smart player that could also provide them with that. And I think overall, I mean, nowadays players are pretty smart and can all come together to fill that IGL role a bit. You don't necessarily need one. It can certainly help. Like a guy like Looney very much helps a team, but you don't necessarily need one. You've got the crazy talent they would have if they had Huke or Vivid. I would personally love to see Huke, especially with him being like in Halo for a while. Ogre 2 is the GM of Florida. It simply just makes sense because Ogre 2 loves those Halo guys. But I don't think Dallas will probably allow Huke to play anywhere else because they don't want to have to play against him with how good he is. Unfortunately, kind of a scummy way to do things, but it makes sense that kind of like Chicago did with Gunless last year. I doubt they'll allow him to play anywhere else until next year. I feel like Vivid is probably more of a possibility because he's sitting on the bench in LAG. LAG played well. I doubt that they're going to put Vivid back in. It doesn't seem like they're pretty set on using that core 3 as their roster. And I'm dying to see Vivid get on this team. I think he would make them so good in search, and I think Vivid on this team would just make them crazy. So basically the take is, do you believe Florida should go insanely hard and flash the bag at Dallas or LAG for Huke or Vivid in place of Havoc? But I believe that is going to do it for this reaction episode. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out and keeps me motivated to keep making these despite how busy I am with job hunting and graduation coming up in a few weeks. And even the comments of you guys just offering opinions, whether you agree or not with my takes or just saying some things that you thought on the weekend, just makes me so happy. So thank you guys all for the support and for continuing to watch. I love you guys, and I will see you in the prediction video for this weekend, probably tomorrow. So thanks for watching, and have a great day, everyone. I'll see you in the next one.